So first off, I wanted to start off by acknowledging the complexity and the significant impact that these regulation rules will or may pose on the self and catering industry in the UK. The law obviously requires short-term let accommodations to meet really specific conditions to obtain a license. Now, each country, county, and local authority has its own mandatory conditions and application process just to ensure the safety of accommodations. And we recommend that you engage with your local industry advisory group or self-catering working group, really to navigate these changes effectively and ensure that you're complying with the relevant regulations. The Professional Association of Self-Caterers, PASC UK, supports the self-catering short-term lets and holiday lets in England and in Wales. Meanwhile, the Association of Scotland Self-Caterers, ASSC, represent the self-catering sector in Scotland. And then we've also got the Irish Self-Catering Federation, ISCF, which is representative and the lobbying body for owners of self-catering properties in Ireland. And each of these different associations or work groups can provide a wealth of information and resources which will guide you through the application process and various reporting requirements. And they consider unique aspects of our self-catering business models. So let's start off by looking at some of the essential conditions every short-term rental must adhere to. Now, these conditions again pertain to the safety of the premises as well as all conducted activities on the premises. So it's also important to note that local licensing councils and regulatory bodies may impose extra conditions just based on local needs and circumstances. So just to start off with, the first thing you need to do is proof of insurance. So when considering insurance requirements for operating short-term lets, there are two crucial types of insurances to keep in mind. The first is the building insurance, and it's essential, obviously, as it covers the property itself from damages that could occur due to various risks. The accommodation must be covered by building insurance. We then have the next one, which is public liability. And this is critical as obviously it protects the business against claims of injury or damage made by the guest or third parties, which could occur at your property. As a business operating short-term let, having public liability insurance is compulsory. And obviously this type of insurance should be in effect for the entirety of each short-term let agreement that you have in place. So adequate protection against potential risks is really important, and we advise consulting with your local authority regarding the specific level of coverage you are required. Additionally, it's also important to adhere to the maximum number of guests allowed in the accommodation as is stated on your license. Moving on to the safety audit and repair standard. For self-catering accommodations, really the repairing standard ensures that the property is safe, in a good state of repair, and suitable for guests. And this includes making sure that the structure of the building is sound, the systems for supplying water, gas, and electricity are safe and functional, and that things like fixtures, fittings, and appliances provided are in good working order. Additionally, the accommodation should be secure, free from damp, ensuring a comfortable and healthy environment for your guests. So meeting the tolerable standard is also crucial to ensuring the property is fundamentally safe and habitable. This would include ensuring the property has adequate provision for detecting and warning of fires, and that there are appropriate means of escape in the event of a fire, for example. And really the aim is to provide a quality, safe, and enjoyable experience for your guests while adhering to the legal requirements for the property condition and safety. It really emphasizes the importance of having a property maintenance schedule and conducting an annual health and safety risk assessment. If we look at the electrical aspects, as a holiday property owner, you're required to ensure that all electrical appliances, circuits, and fixed installations within the property are safe and not hazardous to guests. So to ensure the safety of your property, it's essential to have an electrical installation condition report, which is conducted by a qualified person, and that should usually happen every 3 to 5 years. You would also need to ensure that all your electrical appliances that are accessible to your guests are examined by a qualified person every 5 years. They would then check for potential defects or hazards and produce an electrical report. Now, electrical safety. As the owner of a holiday property, you are responsible for ensuring that all electrical appliances, circuits, and fixed installations in your property are safe and do not pose a hazard to guests. Electrical equipment and wires they deteriorate with use and time, and can, obviously, if they're faulty, lead to serious injury, death, or fire. So the Electricity at Work regulations of 1989 state that your property's electrical installation should undergo testing at least once every 5 years, and any work on the electrical installation should be carried out by a competent electrical contractor. The legislation that I outlined is comprehensive, but basically it specifically states that all electrical systems in the property must be maintained to prevent danger to anyone using the premises. Now, these regulations apply only if you have one or more employees working in your property, but this obviously also includes your cleaners and maintenance staff. So in general, you will have to ensure that you comply with all of the regulations. You also have general duties under the Health and Safety at Work Act, including ensuring that your guests are protected from electrical hazards. So to ensure the safety of your property, it's crucial to have an electrical installation condition report, so that's an EICR, conducted by a qualified individual at least every 5 years, and this is dependent on your actual location. The Electrical Equipment Safety Regulations of 1994 says that all electrical equipment supplied in the course of a business must be safe. So this applies to both new and second-hand equipment. So for all electrical equipment to be considered safe, there should be no risk or minimal risk that the equipment will cause death or injury to any person or domestic animal or cause damage to the property. As such, electrical appliances should be regularly checked to ensure that they remain in a safe working condition. So things like plugs should not be damaged or overloaded. They should have properly rated fuses, and cables should not be frayed. The use of extension cables, trailing leads, and adapters should also obviously be avoided where possible. So why not take a proactive approach and have a qualified electrician ensure the safety of your electrical items through the portable appliance testing, PAT testing? Note that this is a legal requirement for all holiday lets in Scotland specifically. You must ensure that all your portable electrical appliances that are accessible to your guests are examined by a qualified individual every 5 years. This would include items such as TVs, toasters, kettles, lamps, alarm clocks, all of those sorts of things. And most insurance companies will actually also insist on this. We also recommend that you conduct visual inspections before each let. So that would be for checking for those damaged cables, loose sockets, frayed wiring, burn marks, hot sockets, or plugs, flickering lights or tripping, those sorts of defects. Then in terms of fire safety, so all properties must comply with the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005 as amended for England and Wales, and under Part 3 of the Fire Scotland Act 2005, supported by the Fire Safety Scotland Regulations 2006. So for Scotland, these regulations have been in effect for a while, and so many are used to all the various regulations that we need to comply with. But for England and Wales, it's quite new, so there's quite a lot of publications on this. But in general, as part of your legal obligations, it's that you must have an annual written fire risk assessment, which you're required to provide to a guest if they request a copy of it. Now, this fire risk assessment includes a series of inspections and ensures that you have the equipment installed, for example, interlinking smoke detectors and heat alarms, and exit doors that must not need a key to unlock them from the inside, those sorts of things. You're also required to carry out regular checks, including weekly tests of the detection and alarm systems, 6 monthly services of your detection and alarm systems by a competent person, and then again, annual checks on any emergency light systems. And all checks and testing should be recorded, importantly. So other important fire safety considerations to include in your fire risk assessment. So the first is to look at fire detection and warning systems. Effective fire warning systems are crucial, and this would include, I've mentioned, installing those heat and smoke, but also carbon monoxide alarms throughout the property. These alarms play a vital role in early detection, and they can be life-saving in the event of a fire. So it's a good idea to test all your alarms on each changeover, provide your guests with instructions on how to operate the property's appliances safely. The next thing to consider is that firefighting equipment should be available and maintained regularly. So those would be the obvious things like fire blankets in the kitchen. We'd also suggest keeping torches in the house, maybe to act as emergency lighting if required, or if you have a very large property, install other emergency lighting if required. There's also the records of fire-resistant furnishings. As part of your holiday let fire safety obligations, the law requires that furnished accommodation must comply with the Furniture and Furnishings Fire Safety Regulations of 1988 and as amended. These regulations basically ensure that any upholstered furniture supplied for domestic use has a certain level of fire resistance. So they would apply to every upholstered item within the property, and this would include beds, headboards, mattresses, sofa beds, cushions, and pillows. So they do not apply to antique furniture or furniture made before the 1950s. And funny enough, the government are currently considering updating this legislation. So changes are likely to come into effect round about October 2024. And the proposals include items specifically haven't been included. And some of these inclusions are based on the size of the item that is concerned. So things like pet beds, scatter cushions. So keep an eye on that. Another item that I would recommend you look into is your chimney fire safety. If your holiday property has a wood burner or an open fire, it's recommended that you have your chimney swept at least twice a year when burning wood, and annually if your fire uses smokeless fuels. This reduces the buildup of soot, allows you to clear obstructions such as bird nests, and helps prevent fires and carbon monoxide poisoning. Updated fire safety guidance from the Home Office includes a requirement for chimneys to be swept at least once a year. I'd also just like to mention that you need to bear in mind that many of your guests may not be familiar with real fires and how to use them safely. So it's worth providing a guide in your holiday let to help with lighting and extinguishing them correctly as well. Moving on to the energy performance certificates, these contain details about your building's energy efficiency and basically give you suggestions for enhancing it. In Scotland, a valid EPC must be conducted by a qualified energy assessor within the past 10 years. And in fact, it's necessary to apply for your short-term lets application. It's essential to be aware that in some cases, these EPC ratings might have to be included in some or all advertisements. So it's important to confirm this requirement by your local authority as to whether you need to advertise it on your website or in the property itself. Let's chat about gas safety. It's your legal responsibility to ensure that any gas appliances in your holiday let, such as ovens, cookers, and boilers, are safe and meet the relevant safety standards. There are obviously inherent risks associated with having such appliances in your property, and these obviously include things like fires, explosions, gas leaks, and carbon monoxide poisoning. So all heating and hot water systems, not just gas systems, really should be kept in good condition and should undergo an annual maintenance by a qualified contractor. The Gas Safety Installation and Use Regulations of 1998 mandates an annual testing of gas appliances by a gas safe registered installer. It's also your duty to maintain appliances, their fittings, flues, and chimneys, and records should also be retained for 2 years, and a valid gas safety certificate should be visibly displayed in your holiday accommodation at all times. Oil safety. So many holiday home properties are situated in rural village areas and may not have access to mains gas. So in these instances, oil may be used to power the boiler or other heating and cooking appliances. By regulation, owners of vacation rentals that have any oil-fired appliances and equipment need to have it maintained at regular intervals following manufacturer's guidelines. So typically at least once every 12 months, once a year. This is also necessary to comply with updated fire safety advice. So to prioritize the safety of a guest, it's really crucial to have a qualified technician inspect your appliances just as best practice. If your property has an oil-fired boiler or other oil-fired equipment, it's highly recommended that you have your appliance checked annually by a technician that is registered with Offtech. The Offtech registered technician will offer advice on oil safety, and this would include things such as the storage of the oil at your property, and then obviously provide you with the installation check form. So for your safety and that of your guests, you should regularly examine the storage tank and supply pipes just in case for any leak. A reminder that your local district may also have specific requirements regarding Aga cookers. So water safety. So when managing a holiday let property, it's really important to consider the various aspects of water safety. In Scotland, one of the primary concerns involves managing the risk of the Legionella bacteria, which can lead to a potentially fatal type of pneumonia. Legionella bacteria can flourish in man-made hot and cold water systems and apparatus. So according to health and safety regulations, it's crucial to evaluate the risk of your exposure to Legionella in order to guarantee the safety of your visitors. For standard water systems, the risk is really typically minimal, but you might consider implementing some of the suggested steps that I'll mention now at your holiday home rental to just reduce the risk of Legionella bacteria proliferation. So the first thing would be to inspect your cold water storage tanks and ensure that they're equipped with a secure fitting over it to prevent the entry of debris or even rodents into the system. You could also possibly adjust your hot water thermostat to a minimum of 60 degrees Celsius. The reason why is Legionella bacteria cannot survive in water temperatures above this level. Also examine your property for redundant pipework or dead leaks. At these areas is where stagnant water can lie. Also ensure that your cleaning staff clean and disinfect shower heads, as they obviously can retain some water and thus become a breeding ground for bacteria during each changeover or turnover. And then also importantly, if the property has been unoccupied for a period of time, flush out your systems, as the risk of Legionella bacteria may be higher in such instances. So prior to renting, run all the taps at high temperatures, flush toilets, and disinfect these sorts of areas. Additionally, air conditioning units, swimming pools, and hot tubs require extra consideration as these features are popular with guests, but remember they require additional safety management. So it's recommended that the qualified engineers or technician maintain these amenities. And although there's no specific regulations governing swimming pools or hot tubs in holiday lets, you need to make sure that you comply with the general health and safety legislation as laid out in the Health and Safety Work Act of 1974 and the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999. So a thorough risk assessment should be carried out to ensure that these added extras are well maintained and safe to use. So maybe it's as simple as considering putting up safety signs and fencing, considering any slip or and trip hazards, and obviously providing rules around the safety for your guests. Another thing that you may need to consider is if your property has its own private water supply, you would then obviously need to comply with Private Water Supplies Regulation of 2009 and the Water Industry Act 1991, which applies to all private water supplies intended for human consumption, be it whether for drinking, washing, or food production. The law basically is designed to ensure that all private water sources are safe and free from impurities. So make sure to have your water tested, and your local authority will oversee your private water supplies and establish whatever your responsibilities are and recommend any necessary upgrades if they are required. And they'll also determine what the frequency of your water testing should be. So very simply, if you have a private water supply that guests utilize, you're responsible for ensuring that the water and filtration systems are safe and tested in accordance with the various regulations. And again, your local council can provide guidance on these regulations that are pertaining to the private water supplies.